Hey, Snackers, Matt DiNapoli here. I'm a manager of developer advocacy with Cisco Developer Relations.
Hello, Snackers. This is Kareem Iskander. I'm a lead technical advocate with Cisco Learning and Certifications.
And welcome to episode 85 of Snack Minute.
Snack Minute is your weekly 10-minute bite of learning covering tech, coding, and some cool stuff and projects that we work on here.
And the cool thing we're going to be talking about today is pyATS, or Kareem, do you call it pyATS? What do you call it?
I do pyATS.
Yeah, I think I say pyATS as well. Yeah. With our guest, Barry Weiss. Barry, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name's Barry Weiss. Thanks for having me here on Snack Minutes. I'm a technical education content developer over in learning and certifications here at Cisco.
Awesome. And Barry, welcome to 2023. You are our first episode of the new year, and welcome everyone in the Snack Minute world to the year 2023. We're really
excited.
Happy New Year,
folks.
Happy New Year. You can probably see the bags under my eyes. I was partying a little too hard for New Year's Eve, and now we got to do these recordings.
Yeah. But you normally look like this anyway, Matt, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I always look right. So, Barry, glad to have you here, and we're really excited to see what you have to share with us. Can you give us a little introduction about what you're going to talk to us in the audience about today?
Sure. I'm going to discuss today pyATS, and more specifically pyATS testbeds, because it's pretty much a concept that you're going to have to understand about pyATS, whether you're just getting started out with it and you don't know too much about Python, or you're more of an advanced developer. So I kind of feel like what I'm going to show everyone today is some basic things that you should have an understanding of, and it will make it easier for you to, become more familiar with pyATS. So
that's cool. Let's jump into it.
So, anyways, pyATS testbeds. So let's go ahead and just kick it off and discuss what exactly pyATS is for those that don't know and whatnot. So the very first thing we want to say is that it's pronounced pie like a pie. ATS, so it's not pyATS or anything like that.
There you go. There's the answer.
pyATS. In fact, the developers for pyATS on our wiki page have a nice little graphic that shows like a pie and then the letter ATS, all capitals, so that it's pyATS. But at any rate, what pyATS is it's a platform, and it's a framework of multiple different Python libraries and modules that were developed here internally in Cisco for network testing of our products. What we've done over the years is, as this framework has grown, we've seen the value in it, and we've released it out to the public for use as well, and use on their networks. And it's a Apache license, so it's open source. You can peek at the code. There's nothing hidden behind it. You can modify the code. You can contribute to the pyATS platform. But a lot of heavy work has gone into creating these repeatable test beds and these repeatable tests that allow you to go and create generated reports and create pull information, do diff reports, all sorts of different things as far as network testing is gone. So this platform in this framework, pyATS, pretty much takes a lot of that extra work out from you having to create something like a test framework yourself. Now, the nice thing about pyATS is it does come with a command line usage where you could get started very easily without even knowing any Python. And that's the Genie library. And I believe it's now going to be renamed the Python SDK library. But with this command line, it allows you to get started very quickly, and it's not 100% automated because you're not running like a script per se, an automated script. But what it's allowing you to do is just run some automated or some commands in the command line and kind of reap the benefits of what pyATS has to offer. Now, the one thing, though, that you have to know to get those benefits is how to create a test bed, because without the test bed, pyATS isn't going to really know exactly what devices to pull and whatnot. So I guess that takes me to my next little slide here that I have, is what is a pyATS test bed. So at its heart, pyATS, it's a bunch of Python libraries and modules. So essentially a test bed is a Python object. So it's not necessarily some sort of file or anything like that. It's actually, as far as pyATS is concerned, it's a Python object. And there's different ways of doing it. There's different ways of creating it. That's one of the nice extensible things about pyATS is that it gives you a lot of how can I say? It gives you a lot of options to do different things. But what beginners really should be starting out with, for the most part, is the pyATS testbed in a YAML format. So just as a notice to all the people that are getting into this the first time, granted, you don't really have to know much about Python or even really know what Python is or does, but you do have to have an understanding of what a YAML file is and how a YAML file looks and whatnot. So with that being said, that's probably the only real programming thing. But to get started, that's what you're going to do is you're going to define your testbed in this YAML file. And basically a testbed is going to describe the testbed values, so the general values that are going to be in the testbed, the device values such as this connectivity values, and it's any other key values for like credentials and whatnot. And then finally, you'll have the topology section of the testbed file, which will discuss the connectivity between devices and the interfaces on the devices. But the only real important section of a testbed file, especially for beginners starting out, is really just the device section. That's the only section that is really going to be important for users out there when they're getting started. Everything else, is just gravy and is added on and gives you a lot of flexibility, but you definitely have to have the device section. So what does this testbed file, comprise of again? So let's just touch base on that one more time, is that you have this test block right at the top of this YAML file, and that's going to be your global value. So whatever's in there is usually going to be applied to the entire testbed. Then you will have the device block again, which is your device values. That, like I said previously, that's your required block. And then you have a topology block that describes, interfaces and links between there. And that really comes into play when you start getting into a lot of testing or turning up interfaces, turning down interfaces. But when you're using Genie, for the most part, you're not really you don't have to really worry too much about this topology block. It's really only the device block that we have here. So I guess I'll just jump over to this next slide here, just so finally everyone can see what I'm talking about, right? This is the device block. This is the required block here. And the real hardened thing that you have out of this device block is as you can see at the very top where it says like NX-OSV-1, that's the host name of the device that you're connecting to. Right? That always has to match what the actual host name of that device is. So that's the one thing that's always going to have to be a 1-for-1. Everything else that you see in this block, you may have it, you may not have it. It's not 100% necessary, and the reason why is that you can have these values actually defined in other parts of the testbed file. But when you're starting out, for the most part, you're usually going to have a testbed file that looks like this. It's going to be comprised here of couple different parts, and I have them pointed out here, and we'll hopefully we could share the slide deck. So here we have basically the device block, and these are this device block. These are your standard keys and value pairs that you're going to have in the device block, which this is required. Once again, this is the only real required thing to get started with pyATS. So up here at the top, you have the name, which is going to be the host name of the device, and that is always going to have to match 1-to-1, right? And then all these other key value pairs, they're not 100% necessary because you can always have them, named in other parts, like as I spoke about the testbed block at the top. That there could that you could have that there as a global value. But generally, when you're getting started, and in the examples I'm going to show you today, you're just going to have a device block. So all those key value pairs are going to be named here in this device block section.
Now, Barry, for all of the blocks that you're talking about, the device block, and whatnots. Do you have these in separate testbed files, or is that all in one big testbed file?
You can have this in all one big testbed file. So you would literally have each section. You would have another section here, header section that says testbed. Another one. Generally, the way you'll see is then it'll be at the bottom here, and it'll say topology. But you can have one big gigantic YAML file that has everything in there. But you could also have multiple. But then it gets a little more trickier when you're dealing with multiple testbed files. But when you're getting started out, the only thing you really need to do is, have all your devices that you're going to be experimenting with and testing with. You can have them all in just one YAML file.
And what are some of the things that I would need to keep in mind if I'm building this out in production, right? Where I don't hard code my username and password into the YAML files. What's the workaround there, or what do you suggest that we should be doing there?
That's a great point, and I got a slide that deals exactly with that in security, because this is a YAML file. It's all in clear text. So if you do put in passwords in here, it is going to show up in clear text, if you concatenate it or whatnot. So there's two solid methods that pyATS comes with that's going to allow you to deal with that. And actually, if you give me a second, we could jump in a couple more slides and I'll actually touch on that there. So, okay, so to build this for the beginners, like I was talking about with that Genie SDK library, what we have here is the command line called pyATS create testbed, and essentially those are the first three verbs that you're going to run, and then it'll be whether it be testbed file, testbed Ansible, whatnot, or interactive. You could go ahead and you run that command in the command line, and that's one that you don't have to build all that what I just showed you previously by hand is basically the point I'm getting at, right? You don't have to worry about the white space or how you're going to format this out. You can basically have pyATS help you build this, right? And the very first one is the interactive. That's one is basically a wizard. That's the one that I recommend that if you're completely green to pyATS, you're going to use the interactive walkthrough, because it's just going to ask you a bunch of questions. You're going to answer all the questions about your devices, and then it's going to generate the file for you. And then once it's generated the file, you're ready to go. And then you can always use that file as a template for anything else. You could also, if you have a lot of devices, like let's say you're dealing with maybe over 5-10 devices or even more, you could use an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV file. And then also you could use an Ansible inventory. And then you can also use a program called Netbox, and you can build testbed files from both those, both of those. However, just a note on the Ansible inventory, some things have changed. So there's certain limitations right now on what you can do and what you can't do. And until we, kind of update the code a little bit on that one particular function, just be aware that you can't, there might be some settings that are not going to generate the right pyATS testbed file.
There's a bunch of ways to create the testbeds, and pyATS will help us get there.
And I think on a couple episodes ago, we had Palmer Sample on that talked to us about Netbox, and I think he mentioned something around pulling configuration out of Netbox into pyATS.
Yeah. And that's, because that's a single source of truth. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you can just easily pull that data from there by using Netbox. And pyATS allows that, or has that capability with the Genie SDK here.
So Barry, we're getting a little short on time, and I'm wondering, do you have a demo for us to create a quick testbed?
Yeah, I got a couple screenshots here that I can run everyone through. The first one is going to be the interactive. This one's really straightforward here, and as you guys can see in my screenshot on this slide here, this just basically is a wizard that walks you through it. So I recommend that if you're brand new, you just downloaded pyATS, use this pyATS create testbed interactive, and boom, that will create this testbed as you can see here. And as Kareem asked about, like, what if you don't want to use your password? What if you don't want your password to be shown in clear text? pyATS actually comes with, or its testbed YAML file does come with these formatting notation here that you can add in that will basically prompt you for your password. Now, it takes away a little bit of that automation side of it, because if you have different passwords for every device, every time it hits a device is going to ask you for your password, and you're going to have to enter it in. You could build it from the environmental variables, but then there's one other great way that pyATS has that with as far as it comes with what do you call it, the passwords, is that it will also have a command called encode. So if you do a hyphen encode when you're creating your test bed with this create command, it will actually obfuscate the password, so that just encodes it. It doesn't encrypt it, so people can figure out what it is by decoding it. Right? It's like a base 64 hash. But then pyATS does have a utility. It's called secret strings, and it's a separate step that you have to do, but it actually builds an encryption key for you. And you're tying, essentially, it's kind of like Ansible Vault, if you guys are familiar with Vault, but it has the same concept. It creates a key. You basically put in a notation that kind of looks like this, but it has some different wording in there. You put the key in in that section. And then essentially what ends up happening is that when pyATS runs the testbed, it's going to see that that this is now encrypted with the secret strings utility library, and then it will go ahead and decrypt it. So you can essentially have anything secret, anything that you want secret, hashed in that or hashed and encrypted in the testbed file. So it's kind of a cool thing. But the real quickly to just touch on, because just in case as you guys can see with this interactive testbed, that this is all by hand. What else you could be doing is be creating with a testbed with a Excel spreadsheet. And one of the things that you're going to want to get started with the spreadsheet is to build a template for that spreadsheet. You could look in the documentation, but another way of getting to that template is by running this command here. And when you run this command, it will literally build out the template for you and make the spreadsheet for you. You just open up the spreadsheet in Excel, and then you just add your variables in there, right?
Building that template is actually really useful, because it takes away from you having to figure out what is that format for that Excel.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately, Barry, we're out of time. We should probably have a follow-up where we talk about password management and do some demos around that. But before we let you go, since you're the first-time guest on Snack Minute, we always ask our first-time guest this: what superpower would you have, and why?
Well, I have to admit, pyATS is a great tool for testing, but as being a network engineer for like over 15 years here, one superpower I would love is just to put my hand on the switch or router, and then just be able to know like what the issue is. Be like, oh, it's bugging the code. Oh, it's a wrong IP, or something like that. That would be.
What you're saying, Barry, is you want to be super network nerd? Is that what you're after?
Oh yeah. Then I wouldn't need pyATS, right? But since I don't have that super skill, I need pyATS.
All right, Barry, this is awesome, and thank you for your time. Snackers, we've built a learning path into our latest learning platform, Cisco U. So everything that Barry's talking about here and more is in our newly created network automation course. So head on over to the link that's provided here. Get on the early access list so we can let you into Cisco U, and you can check out the latest and what we'll be talking about here. So thank you, Snackers, for your time, and stay tuned for another episode of Snack Minute.